300 124th Avenue North, Lot 91, Largo, Florida. Phone 813-585-0852 on Monday, February the 20th, 1989, and Helen Earley of the Oldsmobile History Center. Location was Mr. Smith's home in Largo. Tape 1 of 1 tape. Well, Smitty, it seems to be working okay. Why don't you start telling me who you are?
Well, I'm Clayton Smith, and I live in Florida, in Largo, Florida. And I've been down here since '82 when I retired. And we traveled back and forth each summer. We stayed here 6 months and went back 6 months. And now we're down here permanently because we put in a new trailer. We sold our home up there, and all of our kids are up there. So we go back maybe a month or two during the summer now to stay with them and fool around, go to lakes up there. And
when did you hire in at Oldsmobile, and why did you come there instead of some other place?
I hired in on this 3/6/47. I don't know. I just looking for a job and went over there and made an application out. And 2 days later, they called me, and I went to work the same day.
Now, where was the employment office?
It was on what's the name of this? The first one.
Olds.
It's on the south side of old building 68.
Well,
I mean 60.
Elm.
Oh, Elm. Is that Elm? Yeah, I guess it is.
Who did you talk with? Do you remember?
Harold somebody.
Harold Good?
No.
Oh.
I can picture him, but I can't think of his last name.
Stegmeyer?
Stegmeyer, that's the one.
Okay.
And he wrote me up, and I had my physical, and then 2 days later I went to work.
Where did you go to work?
I went to work in the motor plant.
Now, what building was that in?
That's 28, the old 28 building.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked there for, I guess, for about a year. Then I went over to the Kittering.
Now, what did you do in the motor plant?
I seated valves by hand, you know. There was 5 of us that was seating valves on the block, valve seaters. Yeah.
So you seated those by hand?
By hand, yes.
Mm-hmm. Was that on a moving line?
Well, we moved our own. Blocks because we rolled them up there. They had to set there a few minutes before we could cut them.
Oh, would they be?
Then we personally moved them to the next inspector.
I see.
And then from there on, they went down to the line to be assembled.
Where did the blocks come from?
They came from the block floor from. They drilled the holes through the blocks and the piston walls, and that's the only part I could see around there.
Then the block came to you, and you said you had to wait a while. Was it too hot to handle?
No, there was no heat to it. It was they were just lined up there, and we moved them personally into.
Oh, you had to wait for one to kind of come.
Yeah.
I see.
But they was coming pretty regular.
There were 5 of you doing that.
5 of us doing that.
Do you remember what you were earning?
Well, I started at $1.22
an hour.
And 2 weeks later, I was making $1.32. I worked for Tombaugh.
Tombaugh?
Tommy Tombaugh, we called him. He was a nice boss.
Okay. Who was the superintendent then?
Louis Church.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. You worked there how long?
I worked there since 47 to 82. Oh, you mean in the
Yeah,
motor
in
plant?
the motor
Oh,
plant.
I worked I seated valves for about a year. Then I went over onto the pilot line for the new Kittering engine.
Okay.
And I helped to run the first engine through the Kittering line.
Great. What building was that in?
Still 28.
Still 28.
The old 28, because they was transferring over.
Hmm?
And I put the heads on. I tightened the head down, put the rocker arm panel on, the manifold on, and we had to torque all every nut that went on. We had to torque it to make sure that the torque on the head was just right.
Well, that was all done manually.
Yeah, it was to start with, and it still continued that way. But we were doing so many jobs because it was only running maybe 10 or 12, maybe 15 motors an hour for the pilot line.
Was that the first engine you worked on? Was that a 6-cylinder or
No,
an 8?
that was a V8.
That was a V8.
V8.
And then
The Kittering engine.
Yeah, but I mean before that, when you were in
When I was in seating
seating the valves,
it
that
was
was
the
the
straight 8 and the straight 6.
Straight 8 and straight 6. Then the Kettering was the V8, right?
V8, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then they started making the production a little bit higher, and they started bringing more people in. So that eliminated doing so many jobs, one man doing so many jobs, because when I left there, they were doing about 87 or 88 engines an hour.
Who was your foreman there?
Walt Lindsay.
Walt Lindsay. Was there you remember the superintendent's name?
Bill Gowan, I think, was the assistant superintendent, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was Church yet. I think Church was still in there. I'm not sure. It seems to me it was Church. And then I worked there until the shell plant, the mortar plant came in. They made mortar shells. And I transferred over to the mortar shells.
What year was that? Do you remember what time?
I think it was 50. I'm just more or less guessing.
Sure.
Well, I think about in the year 50.
What building
And
was that in?
That was still in 28. And
Excuse me.
I was a repairman in there in the shells.
Now, what would you have to do to repair shells?
Well, there's little nicks in them and you sanded them out. You put them in a lathe and just sanded them out and brought them back to specs, what the government wanted for them. And put the knurl on them. There's a little knurl where you put something over the top, it'll snap, like that there, and it'll stay. So they don't fall off. The stuff don't fall off.
Now, would that be on the pointed end of the
It'd
shell?
be on the end. You know how the rocket looks like?
Yes.
Well, the rocket's round, and then it's got that little motor on the back with that flange out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. That's where they had to repair the whole thing. Because the inspectors laid them out, we had to repair them, and then we'd give them back to the inspector, and he'd have to pass them if they were passable.
Now, were those government inspectors or our own?
I think they were our own. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I worked there until I worked there for I would say a good year. Then I went into the pilot line of the jet engine,
Over
making small blades.
there? Plant 3?
No, it was pilot line in I don't know what the building. Can't remember the building number. You know where the big smokestack was before they tore it down?
Oh, yes.
It was in that building there, in that area there. We just had a little room where we had 2 or 3 machines set up to make the pilot, make the little blade for the pilot line,
Mm-hmm.
And we worked there for, God, I don't know how long. Wasn't very long.
Now, this
And
little blade was used on the jet Sapphire engine? Or the engine for an aircraft?
Yes. It's a little blade about, I would say about 3.5, 4 inches long. And we had to polish them so they were the right angles, the diagram of the thing, so when it would scoop the air good, it's make it polished so they were smooth. And we worked there for quite a while on the pilot line. Then we went to the jet plant when that was all set up.
Well, what year was that approximately?
50, last part of 50 or early part of 51. I'm not sure now.
Mm-hmm.
We were the first, our group was the first one in the jet plant for production.
Okay, now
It
who
was brand new. The boss seems to me, Sam Farhat was the general foreman over there.
Mm-hmm. Remember what you were making, earning?
I think it's $1.56, something in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was $1.56. Come think of it.
In a new plant, I suppose the working conditions were pretty great too.
It's like going into the place was like going into a living room. Nice and clean and everything nice and shiny. It didn't last very long. It's just, all the dust that flies around from grinding. It showed that it was a working place. And I worked there for I was a group leader there for 2 years, pretty near 2 years.
Now that group
And
leader is in the
I had 38.
union.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Oh.
No, that's the group leader of people.
Oh, a people.
Production.
Okay, very fine.
It's all set up. We had 38 grinding wheels, with 2 wheels on a stool. There was 2 wheels on a thing with a girl setting it at the stool, and there was 38 girls and 2 men there working for me. And I went around and inspected each one, every day to make sure that they were doing the right thing and get the right angle on the blade. So if you don't, the weight and the balance to that blade, it makes the whole difference in how that engine runs for smoothness. And we had a production, I don't know how many it was now, 300 blades for each girl, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them would get to production, some wouldn't. Sure.
What did you do when somebody didn't get his production?
Well,
you try to find out why?
Yeah, we were watching them all a while. Some of these girls would get so nervous that they couldn't get their production. They couldn't do their blades right, so you'd have to sit down and go over it with them again.
Mm-hmm.
And but after a while, after a couple months, 3 months, they were doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't getting too many rejects on it.
Would those rejects go into the scrap pile, or
They'd
would
probably
you
go in the scrap pile.
You
After they left us, I don't know what happened to them.
You couldn't try to rework them.
No, we reworked some of them. We had to repair on some of them.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't ground down to specs far enough. We could get those, but those is ground too far. We couldn't get them. So then they
About
put 'em-
3 years? I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, I was there probably close to 2 years, from 50, a good 2 years.
Okay.
And this was at the jet plant. Then I think what came up, they had a big fire in Detroit.
Oh, the Detroit
transmission fire.
Right.
And from that fire, I guess jet plant went down. Started going down, not making jet engines anymore. They just kind of phased it out. And then I found out they were going to phase it out, and I said, well, I guess I better find me another job, some other department. So I forget the personnel guy was over there. Fred Barrett, that's the name. Fred Barrett was over there, and I went in to see him, and he had 2 good jobs. He says, one is in the motor plant, and I said, I just came from the motor plant here just not too long ago. He says, the other one is in building 68 in product delivery. And I says, what's this one at product delivery? And he said, well, it's new car delivery, factory delivery cars. People coming in from all over the states picking up their new cars. I says, well, I'll take a chance on that. So I went over there. And there, Paul Bickert was my boss then.
Well, this was about
Yeah.
53?
53,
early
yeah, I'm
54.
guessing in 53.
Sure.
54, in that area. And
You must have had a lot of factory deliveries in those
we
years.
did, we were,
Have an idea how many?
yes, no, this is on a guessing basis because each day would change. Sometimes we'd have 90, maybe 100, maybe some days we'd have 75, maybe. It averaged out pretty good for every day. We was working from 7 in the morning till 11 at night getting them out. And almost midnight before we get home. And
That would
I
be...
found that was a very good job. I mean, good, clean job.
Now, what did you actually do?
I was a driver there. I went what we call chasing cars.
Mm-hmm.
See, they had all the cars that come up from the garage from 19, building 19, came up there and they parked them. And each car had a tag in it. It was a blue card, a yellow card, a green card, a black card. There was 5 different colored cards, one for Monday through Friday. And that's the way we told the cars
I see.
which day that car was supposed to go out. People were supposed to come in. If it was a white card, it'd be Monday. Blue card would be Tuesday.
Okay.
So you didn't have to look for only just that blue card when you went out to look for a car. You could spot a blue card, and if it's the right color and the right serial number, why, you had your car. You took them back out and drove it in for a wash job. And the boys would wash it, and the boys would put the plates on. The customer was in.
So that didn't happen until the customer actually got there physically?
Yes. But we knew when that customer was coming in.
Right.
Because that car would come up, and the paperwork would come up and go in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And we all knew.
Well, who actually did what they call prep the cars like they do now?
Building 19, more or less, I guess, did that.
Prepping was done there. Okay, so when the car got to your area, all you had to do was put the gas in it, put the plate on?
No, there was gas in it, I guess.
I see.
There was plenty of gas in it.
Put the plate on.
We washed it, put the plate on it, and set it up front for delivery. And the delivery boys would call the customer from the waiting room. They'd come out and sign out and drive out. Put your luggage in it and drive out.
Now then, Smitty, they could save transportation by doing that on the vehicle, couldn't they?
The way I understand it, at that time, and then was $375 they saved by flying in, picking up the car.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was. Then it started going down. The average part of it was going down. So they didn't save so much later.
Oh, you mean transportation?
Transportation-wise.
I see, wasn't as much, so the saving wasn't as great.
But they still kept coming in. I think 55 was the biggest year we had in deliveries.
Do you remember how many deliveries you might have had in 55?
Well, that's what I quoted you a while ago.
About up to 90 a day, perhaps.
Yeah, it was a good 90, 80 to 100 cars in between there.
Were you open on Saturdays for customers?
No, we weren't. It was just 5 days.
But 7 to 11, no, you were paid overtime for those extra hours.
Yes.
How many people were doing that?
Well, we had 2 washers, two people washing the car, 2 people wiping it off, 1 man putting the plates on, and 4 men chasing the cars to bring them in line to be washed.
And you were one of those
That's one of the
4.
drivers, yeah. Mm-hmm. Then Paul, we got to have so many customers, and they couldn't get in from the airport or the train stations. There's not enough cabs and stuff, to bring them in, because sometimes there'd be a bunch of 30 people come in at one time. So we got the Oldsmobile bus, the little bus, the 27-passenger bus, And another fellow and I, he took the station wagon out, and I took the bus out. And we picked the people up in the buses, in the bus to bring back.
Oh,
And
from
then
both
about
the,
every time we'd have a
air
bus
and
load
rail.
of people from the airport. That's from the old terminal, not the new one, the old terminal,
Right.
on the west side of the airport. And I drove the bus there maybe for a year and a half. Meantime, Monty Childs, he had jobs for me to do, so I drove the bus for him when he, you know about those jobs that he had.
Yes, he was the tour director
Yeah.
then. And
And
what kind of jobs would you be doing for him? And
Oh, when the press come in from New York, we'd have to go out and pick them up at the airport. And if someone was visiting, they had a bunch of people come in, visitors come in, and then they didn't take them through the factory on the trains, they'd take them on the bus, and we'd just drive through the factory with the bus. So, you know. And when it come about 65, maybe I'm jumping too fast.
no, just whatever
In
comes to your mind.
1965, I went on salary, and I went down to building 60. Worked in the garage down there, in the administration garage. And in the
Who was
meantime, they
your
were
supervisor then?
Cal Space.
Mhm.
He stayed there for 10 months after I got there. Then he left, went as a foreman over at the jet plant.
Now, what
So,
did you do when you worked for him?
The same thing he's doing, just checking cars in and
Now
and
these
gassing.
these were the cars in the company car fleet for
Company car fleet.
executive, and for available for loan to outside
Yes,
people.
we had the loaners there too, utility
Okay.
cars for loaners.
How many cars did you handle in the fleet? What was the average number?
You mean in 60?
Yes.
In 60, we probably had a good 75. But we 30 of them was for utility cars. The rest of them was assigned cars.
Assigned cars.
And then when they built Building 70, we moved over in the big garage. And there was about 150 cars that was assigned to people. And I still had 30 utility cars to loan out.
So your job was to keep track of the mileage, the gas consumption, if anything went wrong on the car or a car came back with some defect on it, what happened then?
We had to send it to the garage out to Plant 4 and get it fixed.
I
In
see.
the meantime, we loaned the person that we took the car out, another car.
Mhm. Do you remember any kind of funny or interesting incidents that happened on some of the assigned company cars or a loaner car, Smitty?
Yeah, the car that Jackie Meister bought. She bought this. Well, before she bought it, this car would stall out about every 150 mile. It would stall out.
What kind of a car was
It was
that?
a Delta. And she put her name on it. I said, Jackie, I don't think you want that car. She says, don't run very good. She says, but she didn't do anything about it. And in the meantime, I sent it to Detroit 2 or 3 times, and every time it stopped down there, it'd stop in the garage and let it sit for a while, it'd start to come home. So
Couldn't find out
nobody could
what
find
was-
anything wrong with it. So I sent it out to the garage again, and one of the older mechanics found what was wrong with it. It was a collapsible hose. The hose would collapse inside. It was just soft, and when it got warm, it would soften up, and the gas wouldn't go through the tube, through the
What was
the hose.
in the gas feed
in the
line?
gas line.
Ah,
And they replaced that, and there was no trouble after that. But that's the only thing I remember of.
mm-hmm. Did some cars that you loaned come back in pretty good shape or bad shape? Or?
Well,
Yes.
sometimes I think I had probably 4 or 5 cars that come back with dings in them.
Would people tell you about them?
Oh yeah, they talk.
Mhm.
And I had one car Don took to Cleveland, a brand new Toro,
That would be Don
Lancourt.
Lancourt.
Don Lancourt.
Mm-hmm.
Took it to Cleveland. He was down there, I think, 3 days. He had it parked. He had his camera and all of his suitcase, getting ready to come home. his camera and a suitcase and his personal belongings that he took with him, you know. And while he's up paying his bill to come out to get the car, someone stole the car.
For heaven's sake.
A brand new Toro. It was the first trip it was went on. And I guess they never found that Toro. I don't know whatever happened to it. I heard a lot of them went to Mexico and they tore them apart and sold them for parts. That's the rumor I heard. I'm not sure what that's the truth or not. But that's one of the rumors I heard. We never got that Toro back that I ever knew of. We had 2 or 3 of them stolen.
Right off the lot? Or
no, on trips.
On trips.
And one of the fellows, let's see, Hans Winfer, yeah, had a car on a permanent basis from my office, and it was in the wintertime, and he drove into one of his places he had to check on, the tool-and-die people that he had to check on for doing our work. And when he walked in the door, he thought he had the keys. He thought he put them in his pocket, and he had one of those type raincoats, that had a double pocket. You could put the pocket in and go a little further, and then it would go inside to your pant pocket, you know.
Oh.
And he thought he put it in his pockets, and he didn't. He went into in the slide-out part, went right down his leg and on the sidewalk. And he stood inside, talking to the fellas to go back into the dye part of the work, and looked up, and there goes his car down the street. And they got hold of that car in about 20 minutes. They called the cops. They got the car back.
Somebody had seen those keys
picked it up and got in the car and took off with it.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Boy, I'll tell you, some weirdos in this country.
Oh, I know it. Do you remember any other interesting incidents?
No. I probably could if I'd sat and think a little longer, you know.
Mm-hmm. What about some of the personalities of people you loan cars to?
Oh. They were very good people. I mean, some of them was the coach, or assistant coach in the Air Corps in Colorado for the football team. He would come to Michigan and travel around for talking to kids that went to play football for them. You know, he was
A scout.
a scout. Yeah, he would come every year, and we'd loan him a car for 2 weeks at a time through one of the assistant sales managers.
Mm-hmm.
I knew him as a personal friend of his, and every time he'd come in, he'd give him a car. And the first time he got out on the highway, he smashed a fender up. Someone ran into him. It wasn't his fault.
Oh, gee.
It was in the wintertime, more or less. I mean, slippery weather. I think I've had outside of 2 cars or 3 cars that were stolen. Maybe a half a dozen fender benders. They were very good drivers.
You had to keep then records on the amount of gas that each car consumed.
I kept records of the amount of gas so I could order the gas.
I see, but not on any.
Not any particular car, no.
EPA to see how well it was doing.
No. The people would tell me how a car was doing. You know, if it's this thing burned a lot of gas from here to Detroit. You know, we know that's about the only records that I kept. And I kept them up here. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But
of course, that's somewhat determined on what kind of a driver you are too.
Yeah. If you got a heavy foot, you're going to use a little more gas, or a fast driver.
Mm-hmm.
But we got pretty good gas mileage on most cars. Kept records on the license plates, keys. We had to stamp all the keys with the license number on the key so it matched the car. So if they got lost, well, we'd know what car they went to. Kept a record of who had the car, for about 2 years late. I mean, 2 years, keep them for 2 years on record. So if there was a ticket picked up someplace, well, we'd know. We could check back through the paperwork and get the guy that drove the car that had got the ticket. It didn't say anything when we were charged for the ticket.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that
happened, I don't know, that happened half a dozen times.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We had to, more or less in the later part of like, early part of 82, we had the most trouble then about tickets. We'd get a notice that we got a ticket, on a certain car, and we'd go through our paperwork and find out who had that car and give him the ticket, make him pay for it, because he's the one that got it.
Now we're in business, Smitty.
I drove the general manager a few times, Detroit.
Now, which one was that?
Harold
Netzel.
I drove him, and who was the general sales manager at the time?
Bill Buxton.
Buxton, and the one right after him.
Feely.
Yes. And Jim
Maddox.
I drove them around. I drove Bob Cook quite a few times, and I drove his wife a few times down Detroit and over to Flint to meet him before they were going up north. Mm-hmm. 1982 came and I retired.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you would be driving these fellows, would they talk about anything? Or would they be working on something?
Well, they'd just carry on a normal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about what they did before, like the years coming up through their life, They never said anything about that.
Or they didn't seem to talk about anything current?
No, they just carried a normal conversation, how's the weather, and talk about the weather and this and that,
Did you work with John Belts at all?
I drove John Belts, I think, a couple of times. He was a comical guy.
Was he?
Him and Metzel get together, and they were two cards. They said what they meant right out.
Remember anything that one of them would say? Kind of funny?
God, that's kind of hard to remember. We passed a red house one time, and it was red. I mean, it was an awfulest looking red I ever seen. And then Metzel mentioned it. He says, "Boy, is that a hell of a looking house." I didn't think it'd come from him,
No, he was pretty reserved.
Yeah, he was.
Mr. Belts was a little more outgoing.
He said what he wanted to say. He would come right out and say it. He didn't mix too many words. He got the point over very fast. And so did Bob Cook. He got the point over good, quick. Went to school with Bob Cook. I played basketball and baseball with him.
Oh.
I grew up with him, more or less.
Then what about salespeople? You met a lot of different salespeople. Eckenberger and...
Well, John lived next door to my cousins, my second cousins, and they knew him well, and every time that I'd talk to them, they would speak very well of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a smart man.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, Smitty, you must have had extra help in the winter when a lot of your cars were stored outside. They'd all be covered with snow.
I had 2 wash boys washing cars. They washed cars all day long. They had the regular cars on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, the execs cars. And then when they got those done in the afternoon, they'd start on the other side
utility
cars, the utility cars and the others. And They'd probably wash 30 cars a day apiece. That's quite a few to drive a mile each way.
Because now that wash job was up there at Building 68?
Yes, it was, they used to wash them by hand. Then they got the regular machine in there, where they just run the car through the machine, regular washer. And they could wash twice, 3 times many cars that way as they could by hand.
Well, then you'd have to clean the inside out, too.
They had a big vacuum to do that.
Vacuum.
They just take maybe 2 minutes to vacuum the whole thing out, good.
So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the executive cars were washed and sort of vacuumed.
Well, they were. All of them were vacuumed.
I see.
All the cars were vacuumed. Every time we went through the wash rack, it vacuumed.
That was part of the, I see.
That's for resale. So they keep the car in good condition for resale. And they've done an awful good job. They've done a lot of cars. 2 men would run between 50 and 60 cars a day. And sometimes they'd wash one car twice a day. If it was slushy and stuff, and one of the execs went out, they'd watch. When he come back, they'd take and wash it. So it'd be clean for him.
I see.
So their job was very important. To keep the cars clean, so for resale.
You didn't get involved then in the resale of company cars at all?
No, not up to 68 I didn't, no. No. That was, there's where all the calls came in for to sell the cars, put their names on the cars. I had people come down looking at the cars when I had them to find out what kind of cars we had down there and what was available. And then if they saw the one they wanted, well, they'd go back up to 68, put their name on it. Because that's where Jackie Harmon had that particular job, where she.
So you'd have people come down in the administration garage of Building 70 and like a car, and then they could check it out with you to see who was driving it?
Yes.
And then check through product delivery to see that it was a tag for anybody?
Right, see if anybody had their name on it.
I see. Well, then, did we sell cars to, we didn't sell cars to outsiders, did we?
If you're a vendor, I guess you could buy a car.
I see. Was that discount the same as
I think
GM?
it was. I'm not sure, but I think it was. I think they could buy a car just like the employee could, from what I understood. And I believe they got the same discount. Because we've had vendors come in and look at cars in Building 70, and then they go to their special exec up there, like Maddox, somebody like that there, and get permission to buy it.
What was Mr. Maddox to deal with?
He was a very good man. I like Mr. Lane. Bill Lane.
Yes.
He's
easy to work with. And how often did they change the executives' cars?
We put 3,000 miles on, or equivalent to that, to whatever we could get an exchange car to replace it. Maybe we'd get 3,000 miles, maybe 3,200 miles on it. Depends on when the car come in. If it had 28 or 2,900 miles, we send Detroit. And he drove it for 2 days. He might put on another extra 100 mile or so to get back. And in the meantime, we had another car come down to replace it. So we tried to keep them. We tried to keep them as close to 3,000 as we could.
Well, where was the decision made on what cars were put in the fleet, Smitty?
I think that was. They ordered them in product delivery. They ordered them in. I think they ordered them in product. Jackie could tell you more than I could, but it seems to me they were ordered in product delivery. Then they went to car distribution to put in to make the car, where they ordered the car to put it in. But whatever they wanted came from 68.
So the initial order.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
I see. And then the car distribution
would process the thing and send it to Fisher Body for production.
I see.
I think that's the way it runs. I'm not sure.
Well, at the start of a new model then, how many cars, was there a certain number that you knew of the new model that you were going to get right away, or did these filter in different series and body styles over the model year?
Well, some of these execs would order a new car for themselves, personal car, and they'd order it. Then they'd put it in my fleet.
Yeah, they'd order it early?
Yes.
How early would that be?
Whenever they first
Could accept orders?
Accept the orders.
Yeah, and that would come into your fleet then about what time of the year?
I would say they would start dribbling in end of September, I'm guessing, from what I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
End of September, October.
And then you
I would
get rid of the older model.
The older models.
Replace it with
and
this
replace
new.
it with that one and get the 3,000 miles on it. And then I'd order another one to replace that one. So
Oh.
just one.
Okay, so, but you didn't know when you were ordering another car, just what kind of car you would be getting in the fleet?
No, not really.
I
no.
see.
They had to put so many of each kind in
Oh, I see.
to make up, for resale.
Kind of a representative
Yeah.
sampling. There's so many Omegas, so many
Deltas,
Deltas
98s. That's just so they could keep so many of each one for resale.
Mm-hmm. And now, who was your direct supervisor when you retired?
Bob Richards
Oh, yes.
didn't bother me for a minute. He'd drive by the office, come out of the garage, drive by the office and wave, and that's it. He never bothered me. Never bothered me for a minute.
You knew what you were doing.
Well, I was there long before he was.
True, true.
I was doing the job before he knew the job was there.
And he reported to,
I think he reported to Maddox,
I
more or
see.
less. Yeah.
Mhm.
But Glenn Smith, when I left, Glenn Smith had charge of that department.
That was in 82?
81 and
82,
82, 81 and 82.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last part when I was there, the last part. He was my, not my direct boss, but he was the boss above me, above Bob, I think it was them. They transferred it into there again.
And what did they call that department that Smith headed up?
Gordy Osborne was the head of the department.
Oh, sales analysis?
Sales.
And distribution?
Just distribution,
Okay.
that's what it was.
Very fine. And Smith, did you see much of him?
Oh yeah, Glenn was an awful nice fellow to work for. He never bothered you. He joked with you, If you get along with people, your job goes easier.
Yes. Well, Smitty, did you ever have any problems with loaning cars to people that weren't GM people or Olds people?
What do you mean problems? What kind of?
Well, I mean demanding people that wanted, or maybe they were been promised a car and they didn't know what they were going to get when, except it were being Olds.
Yeah.
How did you handle
I only
that?
had so many cars or so many types of cars that I could give out, and if they come last, they got what was left. That's the only way I could run it. But if I knew before, like a few days before that they was going, well, I could kind of work one into them, a good car. But if they come in last and just pop in and want a car, they'd get what I had left.
Remember any of them being really belligerent about that?
Yeah, but I'd rather not talk about this one
Okay.
first. I went to school with him, and I'd rather not talk about it.
Fine.
He had trouble with the execs too, so it's not only me that had the trouble with him.
Okay, we can just skip that.
Yeah.
Oh, can you think of anything else that might be helpful in your job as the supervisor of the company car fleet? Just anyone who was reviewing that area of responsibility?
Well, let's see. About once a year, the Detroit office would send somebody up to check my paperwork.
And your paperwork was really by hand, wasn't it? You
yeah.
didn't have any mechanical device
No,
to maintain
no.
the record, I see.
No, it was all paperwork.
Was this an auditor?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He come in, they stayed sometimes 2 days working in the office,
Mm-hmm.
just looking over all the, I had to get all the loan out slips, and he went through them. And he made his decision, and he took that to his boss. Whatever the decision was, I don't know. He never said.
I see.
But I never heard anything about it, so
Mhm.
must have been right.
Well, you also had an alternate working for you in the garage too. Who was he?
Let's see. He's one of the aldermen now. What's his name?
Luadado?
Luadado.
Oh.
Come in and took my place when I went away. Had to go away someplace. He sneaked down there and sat there and
Mm-hmm.
took the job.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was in what department then?
He was in car distribution.
I see.
Then he went to 68, product delivery. Worked up there for, I don't know how long, quite a while. Then I think he went back down to car distribution, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
After I left, I don't know.
I see.
But I think he left the product delivery and went back to some other department. Then he's retired now, I guess.
Yes. Smitty, then did you retire because you really had been planning on retiring, or because some of these opportunities came up to retire earlier?
I just thought I had enough years.
Mm-hmm. How many years did you have?
Well, from 47, March 47 to November of 82. That was about close to 36 years.
That's quite a record, isn't it? It says a lot for you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the company, too.
Well, it's a good place to work.
Yes.
I enjoyed my work. I loved it.
Most of the people I've talked with say something similar, too. They really liked their work at GM.
Well, the execs was the best people in the world up there. Good people.
Do you miss it?
Yes, in a way. I miss people.
Mm-hmm.
I miss the people.
Of course, you were around a good many people.
Yeah.
A lot-
I knew about everybody in the shop.
I'm in contact with a lot of different personalities. Do you ever remember any GM executives that you saw, like Bob Stemple?
I saw him in Detroit when I made a trip down there for some reason, I don't know now. I saw him down there.
Mm-hmm.
The one I saw down there. Can't remember his name now. So am I like the people I work for.
Oh, it showed. Let's see, Mr. Sanchez hadn't come in yet, had he?
No, he come in, I don't know, a year or so later after I retired. I'm
Yes.
guessing, I don't know, because I left the place and I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad Bill Lane got it.
Oh, yes, very fine man. Very, very fine. A lot of people have a high regard for Mr. Lane.
Yeah, way back in 1966, I guess it was, when he was still over to Bill in 60. Cook always come into the office there, because he parked right here, and all he had to do was get in the car and walk in the office. He'd sit there, because we knew each other for years. And I says, Bob, I says, how'd I word it? Bob could tell you. I said, Bob, one of these days you're going to be the general manager of this place. He says, oh, you're kidding. He says, I ain't even thinking about it. The words to that effect. And this was in 65 or 66. I just got down there. And I told him he'd be general manager one day. He says, no, the words to that effect. And he says, I probably won't be here then. So I might retire before then. Well, I think about 10 years later, he was general manager. So as soon as he come back, after he was, and they had that announcement, I run out the house, his house. Congratulated him. All right.
Mm-hmm. Well, what made you think he might be general manager?
Oh, just a feeling.
Mm-hmm. He made a good one, too. I think, do you keep in touch with him down here?
I don't know where he's at down there.
He owns a dealership in Fort Myers.
Fort Myers?
Mm-hmm.
I heard he built one down there.
I'm going to attempt to contact him. I saw him at Christmas time and talked with him about the oral history interview. And, well, Smitty, we don't need to get all this on tape. Do you think we've covered all of the salient points?
I think so, yeah. Part of that I can remember.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate this. This is a big help